Hello there, guys. This is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I'm very excited to bring you today a TBR for Rating Project Gutenberg 2023. So it's quite an ambitious TBR. I'm sure I won't get to everything, but I'm just gonna do my best. I've been having a little bit of a mental health strain lately, so I might not be able to do as much as I want, but I'm just gonna be okay with that. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna survive. Okay, so first of all, of course, I'm gonna be reading Poor Folk by Fyodor Dostoevsky because that is the book that you guys voted on for our group read poll. I'm super excited to dive into like a lesser read Dostoevsky. Yeah, it's pretty short, so if you want to join us for the group read, it shouldn't be too hard. It's almost like more novella length, I would say. So yes, short classics we love. Okay, next I will be continuing with Pillars of the House by Charlotte Murray Yonge, which I also got from Project Gutenberg. And this is following I should describe what Poor Folk is about a little bit. Because I'm about to describe Pillars of the House, but I didn't really describe Poor Folk. So all I know about Poor Folk is that it was written during Dostoevsky's socialist period. So he was a Russian Orthodox believer from a young age, but it wasn't until after his experience being exiled to Siberia that he really shows that really dramatically in his works, where like Christianity became like the main thing he was talking about. He was like writing against nihilism. So in his earlier works, of which Poor Folk is among them, I think Poor Folk is his debut novel. He was writing at the time amongst this crowd of naturalist writers, and what that means is doing a lot of vignettes of people living on the streets of St. Petersburg, people who were not wealthy, which actually Dostoevsky was very good at writing this sort of thing because he was, among all the Russian writers that were famous from this period, he's the only one that did not come from a background of landed gentry. So he had a lot of interaction with peasants. He was always in debt, always in debt. He was just a terrible spender. He was a gambler, and he would spend money on things where it was like, you don't need to do that. So yeah, he was terrible with money. And so I think he really identified with the lower classes. So I'm really excited to read this. This really was extremely popular with the naturalist school of writers in Russia at the time. Sorry, my foot, I'm keeping it raised. So that's a challenge. But anyways, so yeah, Vissarion Belinsky was like a really famous Russian literary critic who literary magazines were like big sellers in St. Petersburg at the time. That's where people got their news, basically, was through literary criticism, because you weren't allowed to say whatever you wanted about news elsewhere. It was controlled. There were censors from the Tsar and stuff like that. So yeah, it was an interesting time to be writing literary fiction and literary criticism because everybody in St. Petersburg was reading it. That was their connection. And so I think that's why I really love Russian work from this period, is because it is so socially conscious. It's very Dickensian. They read a lot of Hugo, and I love Hugo. So yeah, I just am really excited to try out Poor Folk. It was widely acclaimed amongst the naturalist school, and it just catapulted him to fame instantaneously upon the publication of Poor Folk. So, very important book for the writing career of Dostoevsky. Young Dostoevsky, super young. I don't know exactly what age. Okay, next, Pillars of the House, like I mentioned. So this is following a family of 13 children when their provider, this is a Victorian novel, did I say that? Their provider can no longer provide for them. And so we're kind of following what happens to the children, how their faith develops or doesn't, how their character develops or degrades. And I just am adoring it so far. So much has happened. I'm 32% into it so far. And I want to do nothing but read that. But since I'm trying to read lots of nonfiction, it's going slower than I want it to. But it is what it is. I'm just loving it. There was recently a conversion scene that was just so beautiful, really like an everyman kind of Christian, just kind of sharing his faith. And it worked. It was beautiful. So I'm obsessed. There's, like I said, so much that has happened plot-wise already in this book. I mean, I guess 32% is pretty long considering how gigantic the Pillars of the House is. But yeah, it started off with a bang, that's for sure. So I'm going to continue with that. I'm also hoping to read Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. So this I have nominated for Victoria's Patreon Book of the Month. So her Patreon is wonderful because it's a reader's choice Patreon. So readers suggest the genre first of all, and then she does a spinning wheel to select the genre, and it's a monthly club. And then after the genre is chosen by the spinning wheel, then we all suggest titles that fall under that genre. So, yeah, I'm hoping that this will get chosen. Last month, my genre got chosen, which was classic horror. So this month, we are reading a classic horror novel called Carmilla, which I think got from Project Gutenberg. But hopefully, I'm like 2 seconds from finishing that, so that will not be part of my Project Gutenberg reading. But I read a lot from Project Gutenberg. A lot. So, yeah, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. I can't believe I've never heard of this or read this before. Apparently Victoria read it in college. She was like, oh yeah, I want to reread that. So, and I mentioned it on Instagram, and one of my subscribers mentioned that he would like to do a read along of it with me. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to announce it here. I'm going to be reading Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. You're welcome to join us. If people are interested, we could start an Instagram group. Let me know. So this I found out about this through Jasmine L. Holmes, who did a don't read this instead kind of a post. And she did a bunch of books that people in the past would maybe read to learn about the life of a slave or about Black history or things like that. And so she compared it to Uncle Tom's Cabin and said, Uncle Tom's Cabin was super important. It's very important for certain things. It's like historically incredibly important. But if you really want to learn about the life of a slave, you should maybe read about it from a slave's point of view, like actually somebody who was a slave and is writing about their experience. And so she recommended Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs because Harriet Jacobs actually experienced slavery and is writing about it to us, to everybody, to know what it was like. So I really want to read that. Last year for Rating Project Gutenberg, we read, I forget what it was now. It was like a tract that I'd also never heard of, and I couldn't believe I'd never heard of it because it's by a really famous Black woman abolitionist. I was like, how have I never read this woman? I grew up in California. I feel like we should have been reading this stuff, but there's so much to cover in such a short little time. I'm not one to try and complain about. I'm going to try not to complain about what we read in school and what we didn't, because what I remember my teacher saying over and over again was, we cannot read enough that will really give you an education. There's no way we can fit everything in. There's so much we'd love to fit in, but we can't. So I'm excited to be finally discovering these as an adult. I don't know why it took so long. But anyways, excited to try Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in reading along with us. We'll do like an Instagram chat or something like that. Okay, the other things that I had written down, and I will include links to all these, by the way, in the description so that you can read them on Project Gutenberg if you're interested. The next things are A Hero of Our Time by Lermontov. And I don't know if I'll actually get to this, but this was, I think, this was the runner-up in the poll. And so it was like the poll for our group pick where Poor Folk won. Poor Folk won by 1%. So there was like one person more who wanted to read Poor Folk. So A Hero of Our Time was like very popular in the poll. People really wanted to read that. So I might try to pick that up. I know personally that 2 of my co-hosts voted for A Hero of Our Time. So we'll see if I can get to that. It might be too much for me considering all the other things I have going on. But thankfully, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl is a nonfiction book. So that's going to be helpful. Other things I want to read: The Possessed, or The Devils, or Demons. But on Gutenberg, it's The Possessed, and in parentheses, The Devils. This is another Dostoevsky book, and I really want to read this so that I can do a where to start with Dostoevsky video, because I get that request a lot, but I just feel like I want to read all of his major novels first. So I think Demons is the last major novel that I have, but there are other things that I want to read by him. So regardless, I really want to read Demons. I started it last year around this time, and I was really loving it, but I was just too stressed to really give it the attention that it deserved. I hear that it actually picks up shortly after the point that I got to. So, I wish I had been able to continue it, but I think I'll try this time. If I can finish Poor Folk in a reasonable amount of time, then I might move on to Demons. And I'm really looking forward to reading that because I was loving it. I have a really bad history right now of actually finishing classics, but I did recently finish Bleak House, so it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Okay. Other things: The Lower Depths by Maxim Gorky. I forget what exactly it was that really drew me to this, but there's something about Gorky's political life that was fascinating to me. I forget if he was writing during, I think maybe he was a proponent of the Russian Revolution before it happened. And then when it happened, it went so badly that he changed his mind, maybe? Which is fascinating to me. And I feel like, I don't remember what The Lower Depths is even about. I feel like it might have been a play. But anyways, maybe not. No, there was a different one that was a play. Woe from Wit. I recently watched a video from Carolyn Murray Reads where she was recommending where to start with Russian classics. And she recommended Woe from Wit. But that one's not available, unfortunately, on Project Gutenberg. And then another potential thing, but I probably won't do it, but I kind of want to do it, is Notes from the Underground, also a Dostoevsky novel. So obviously you could probably tell this is a Russian-themed readathon this year for Project Gutenberg and Rating Project Gutenberg 2023. And I'm just so ready for it. I chose a Russian theme for this year because I was in the mood to read some Russian literature. Guys, I just found a couple more books on Gutenberg, and they're nonfiction, so I had to mention them because I'm really excited about them. So I heard about this travel writer, Isabella Bird, and apparently she traveled through Korea and her neighbors. I forget what year it was, like maybe 1890 or something like that. Anyways, and then she also traveled through Japan, and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to check out these travel memoirs. So that's some more for my TBR. That's it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this TBR. Please let me know if you're going to be joining us for Rating Project Gutenberg, or if you want to read Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, which is also counts for Rating Project Gutenberg 2023. So yeah, join us. Let us know if you're joining us. Share if you're interested, if you think your subscribers would be interested, or people you know. And sharing really helps, guys. Thank you for sharing, because it always says, oh yeah, people share your videos. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.